Dog lives matter too. Known as man's best friend and most loyal companion, Canis lupus familiaris, also known as the dog. If you have ever had a dog, you probably love them a whole lot. But if we love and care about them so much, why do millions die every year because of us? My name is Olivia Grochowski. I am currently 13 years old, and today I want to talk to you about a problem in the world that people don't care about enough. When people want to adopt a dog, they usually have extremely specific qualifications, like whether it needs to be hypoallergenic, a small lap dog, or any specific breed, such as a yellow Labrador or a husky with blue eyes. They look to breeders because they know they can get exactly what they want, when they want. But what about the thousands of dogs in shelters and rescues waiting to be adopted? Or the dogs taken in by pounds, places that pick up stray or lost dogs on the streets, only to get killed within 72 hours? Or the dogs found on the streets but not getting rescued because shelters and rescues just don't have enough space? Animal shelters and rescues should be looked to and supported more often because they help these abandoned and injured dogs, and they give these canines a chance at a real home. One reason why people should rescue dogs from shelters and rescues is because dogs suffer every day because of our problems. They're usually abandoned because of some type of difficulty going on in our lives, whether it's moving, allergies, cost of maintenance, or any other issue pushing them to the idea of abandonment. According to the Humane Society of the United States, 2.7 million adoptable dogs are euthanized or killed each year in the United States. And simply because not enough people consider adopting these dogs. And when these dogs don't get adopted, in most places, they're killed. Luckily, some dogs are rescued and put into foster-based rescue groups. Foster families are people who give dogs a temporary home and train them until they are able to be adopted. The second reason people should consider adopting from shelters and rescues is because these dogs will be so grateful that you rescued them, and the love and gratitude you'd feel from them is so different from any gratitude you've ever felt before. The majority of dogs in rescues have gone through trauma like no other. But after these dogs are in rescues and have a foster family, they become the most gentle and most loving dogs you will ever meet. Nearly all of these dogs will. Trust me, I've seen the results myself. I volunteer at Home for Good Dogs Rescue in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. It's a nonprofit organization, which basically means that any profit that Home for Good makes goes directly to helping more and more dogs in any way that they can. They also are completely foster-based, so that means that every dog they rescue goes straight to a qualified foster to be trained and be more comfortable around people and other dogs. When I volunteer at adoption events, I first help set up crates for each of the dogs attending the events, and then I just help out with other things until the fosters with the dogs arrive. Volunteers feed, take the dogs to the bathroom, and watch the dogs, as well as the locals to make sure they follow our rules, like don't put your fingers in the crates, because you don't know what the dogs are going to do. Home for Good Dogs also has adoption events every single Saturday in different locations around New Jersey and sometimes even in New York. And sometimes locals will just be passing by these events, and after one look at a dog, they'll adopt it. Not too long ago, I worked at an event at a small street fair with only about 11 dogs, and all of the dogs got blessed by a priest. And at this street fair, 4 or 5 dogs got adopted. And there was another time. There was this dog named Kingsley. Kingsley was found in North Carolina, and he was really mistreated and severely injured on his back leg. Home for Good Dogs saved him and flew him to New Jersey. I first met him when I was going to an adoption event, and my mom's really close friend, who's also the founder of Home for Good Dogs, was taking me, so I walked over to her house. When I first met Kingsley, he was so nervous. He was basically shaking out of his skin at the sight of people. But after just about 2 weeks with other people and other dogs, he became the most gentle and most playful pup I've ever met. And later, Kingsley got adopted by the very pilot that flew him to New Jersey. Working with these dogs and seeing them grow and change despite their horrible pasts brings me a kind of joy that I used to only think of feeling. It's different from that feeling you get when you win an award or you get a good grade. It's an unexplainable feeling of just pure happiness. For example, this dog is Mia. She was found nearly starved to death. Home for Good Dogs took this dog in and gave her proper treatment, and eventually Mia got adopted. And this dog was found with his collar so tight on him that it cut through his skin. But after Home for Good Dogs rescued him, he made a full recovery and found his forever home. It's rescues like Home for Good Dogs that give these canines a second chance at life. If you still aren't entirely convinced and you want that specific Labrador from the breeder, have you ever heard of a puppy mill? A puppy mill is a factory-style breeding facility that puts profit above the well-being of the dogs. They keep these dogs in horrible conditions and with improper medical care. These dogs are pretty much forgotten until they're needed for breeding, to be auctioned off, or just to be killed. A ton of breeders are puppy mills. I'm not saying all breeders are puppy mills because there are some that treat their dogs correctly, but a lot of them care more about their money than their puppies. Rescuing from shelters and rescues is a way to fight against puppy mills because they won't be making a profit and eventually their businesses will just fade away. Also, when you adopt from a rescue or shelter, the dog is usually a great pet because they're usually pre-trained or in the process of training, so it's a lot less work for you, and let's be serious, who doesn't love a little bit more free time? Also, when you adopt a dog from a rescue or shelter, it's usually a lot cheaper because they're already spayed or neutered and sometimes even microchipped, and those prices are included in the overall adoption price, in contrast to buying from a breeder and having to go to the vet a lot, like over and over again, which costs a lot of money. So in the end, animal shelters and rescues should be supported and looked to more often because they help these abandoned and injured dogs and they give these canines a chance at a real home. If you want to adopt, do some digging, and you could probably find a rescue or shelter relatively close to where you live. If you don't want to adopt or you can't, don't worry, there are other ways of helping, like volunteer. I told you a bit about my experiences volunteering at Home for Good Dogs. Just donate a little bit of your time to helping these dogs find a good home. Or if you want to do a little bit more, you could also just donate money. When you donate money, it helps these rescues and shelters expand and grow so they could save more and more dogs. And that 2.7 million could decrease by a lot. Lastly, if you still want to do more, you could spread the word. If a family member or a friend of yours is thinking about getting a dog, tell them about all the information you learned from that awesome TED Talk you listened to. And tell them why they should adopt from a local rescue or shelter in comparison to adopting from a breeder. These dogs don't deserve to be abused or killed, starved or ignored. They shouldn't be forced to breed only to end up being auctioned off like an object or killed like a nothing. Thank you for listening to my talk, and I hope you learned something important today. Roger Caros once said, "Dogs are not our whole lives, but they make our lives whole." Thank you.